I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm joined today by Randall Einhorn, director and executive producer of Abbott Elementary. And so, Randall, obviously been on this show since the get-go. You've directed 20 episodes up until the episode that has most recently aired. And you're obviously, really familiar now with these characters, with these actors, with this crew, with the world of Abbott in general. So to start things off, I'd just be curious to hear from you how your process has evolved or changed throughout the years as you've become, whether that be as a director or as an EP, as you've become, more comfortable in this world and more comfortable with your coworkers.
Yeah, I don't know that my process has changed all that much. I've been fortunate to always work on shows with good people. I have this, I am certain that I spend more awake time with my crew than I do my wife. So I choose to surround myself with cool people so we all have a good time. So, that's kind of been something I've always done. I mean, since The Office, we always had, great people all around us. And I've really carried that with me and try to crew up with a good crew of people to help me make me look good.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely understandable. And you just mentioned The Office because you've obviously talked a lot about, developing the mockumentary style on this show, and you're obviously an expert in that area. But I'd also be really interested to hear from you, how you've kind of sustained that style from season to season, because how do you, 3 seasons in, find new ways to, implement, for example, the talking heads, to implement the reaction shots and kind of keep it fresh? Because I do think there is a version where these stylistic elements become repetitive or become stale or become tiresome. So how do you kind of avoid that when you're 3 seasons into a show?
Well, I would argue that this mockumentary style keeps us honest. And I think that we have some rules, and our rule, basically our only rule that we really stick to is, could we have gotten that shot? Could the crew have gotten that shot without shooting each other? Because I would never shoot where another camera was. So I think that adversity, that difficulty, Einstein said, in the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. And I think that's very true, that sometimes the harder you make something to do, the richer it looks and the more layered and textured it looks. And I would argue that mockumentaries are certainly that way. They're very, very, very difficult to block. I mean, blocking a mockumentary is so much more difficult than just doing a traditional sitcom, or a traditional comedy. It's like they're there and then over here. And we need to always keep it on its feet, keep it alive, keep it moving. And you're always finessing it. And you're not really doing that on most comedies. No. I think that I really like the format. I didn't know that I would ever do another mockumentary. In fact, I told myself I have a moratorium on Zooms after I left The Office. But then I read Abbott Elementary, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And then I met Quinta, and I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm 100% in. Yeah, I'd like to do this. So I'm surprised I'm still doing mockumentaries, but man, I'm having a really good time.
And I guess what you're also saying is that it never becomes easier, right? Even though you've been doing it now for such a long time, that you've been using this mockumentary style, even 3 seasons into this show and having done many seasons of it, it's still very difficult to kind of find, the right moments for some of these talking heads, or also to know, when is it too many talking heads? Talk about kind of that decision making, because that's also an issue that I assume you could run into.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we actually will shoot a talking head that if there's a scene that I think, okay, maybe it's not going to make the show, but it's a building block story. Right. And a more efficient way of getting those building blocks, that information, might be doing a talking head of it. So I have on occasion actually turned scenes into talking heads, so the story elements are still there. I used to do that on The Office all the time. On the pilot, I actually shot a scene that was a talking head. That I thought this would be better as a scene. Let's do it as a scene. And it was a talking head, but I think it was just much better as a scene. But it's fun to play with that. It's really fun to play with that. The finale, you talk about blocking the show in 3 seasons into it. You think about the opening shot of of season 3 premiere, where the camera's outside and Ava opens the door for us, and the camera goes inside and it whips around and it starts pulling Ava. You know, we had to shoot that we shot that on our exterior location, and we shot the rest of it on our interior stage. So there's always a new problem. There's always something new to do. It's not the same. I mean, inevitably, because where people sit in the like teacher's lounge, you tend to shoot one way quite a bit. But it's also fun to find ways of mixing that up. But yeah, I don't feel like it gets repetitive. I feel like it gets the format offers opportunity to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And you already mentioned the premiere, the 2-part premiere. And what I think this is kind of one of the most unique episodes of Abbott, because, you know, there's so much going on in it, right? You not only are playing a bit with time, because the episode, you know, starts in the present, then it flashes back, and then it kind of jumps back to the present. You have a lot of character development, a lot of character changes. And then on top of everything else, you're also introducing some characters. So how did you balance all of these elements while at the same time immersing viewers back into the world of Abbott after what was essentially this, you know, 10-month hiatus?
Yeah, you know, I have to put that to the writers. I struggle, like, you know, when I read the outline, that's one thing. I might, you know, have some notes on an outline or talk about it. But when I saw, so in the outline form, I'm like, oh, how is this going to work? And then I read the script and I thought, no, this is going to work pretty cool. This kind of explains a lot. But when you watch the show, you are up to speed by the end of the cold open. You know what's happening.
Yes.
You know, time has passed. You know, the camera crews got their cameras stolen. You know that Janine now works at the district. That's a lot of information. So that therefore, and that's all in the cold open. Therefore, you can just sit back and enjoy the ride. And that's really smart writing, to take care of so much exposition and so much lost time and so many unanswered questions, and just do it in the cold open, and then it's done, and then you can just enjoy it. That's good writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was not confused at all. I felt like I knew exactly what was going on. And, you know, that just shows how strong the writing is. And, you know, speaking of strong writing, one of the aspects of the show that I've always really admired is its ability to incorporate pop culture moments into the show without those moments feeling forced. And we obviously have that in this episode with the, you know, Jeremy Allen Black scene, which I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. It, you know, set the internet on fire, and for good reason. That's one of those scenes where I feel like had the staging been wrong, or had the delivery been wrong, or had, you know, any element of that scene not quite worked, that scene could have felt really forced, but it doesn't in this case. So I guess talk about, you know, working on that scene and making sure that it, you know, fit into the narrative, even though it wasn't in a way, I guess, self-aware, if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, you know, that scene, interestingly enough, it was scripted as moments later. So you have the scene outside with teachers conspiring to upseat, you know, good Ava, and then it said, then it cut to him walking in, and I thought, this is going to be much better to play this continuous. I'll just stage this right outside the door and go inside, and I can see Ava in the background of this, and I know what they're conspiring against. And I think those things, those pop culture, the things that are jokes, you know, that are overt jokes and that could feel written.
Yes.
My job as director is to make them feel not written, to make them feel, you know, like they happened in the moment and that they're from character. And obviously our writers are very good at writing from our characters' points of view. But anytime I see a joke coming, I try to avoid it. I try to kind of prevaricate around it. I try to let the, you know, force the viewer to help the viewer not to see it coming. Because when I see a joke coming, by the time it lands on me, it's got a sickly taste in my mouth. And I'm like, yeah, that was a joke. I don't want it to feel like a joke. I mean, we obviously have jokes, but I think sometimes, you know, sometimes you want to move through the joke, or you want to move up to the joke and then land it and then keep on moving. I don't like to sit and wait for laughs. I like to keep moving. And if somebody misses something because they're laughing, that's okay. You know, because they're already laughing. So win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. You never want the comedy to feel forced. You never want it to seem like, oh, this is the moment we wanted you to laugh in this moment, right? Those are the moments that you never want in a show. And I feel like
No,
we never.
you see that done though. You do see these jokes, and you see people, the actors waiting for the laugh, and it just always feels so insincere and contrived. And when I'm aware that I'm watching a television show, I'm probably not having a good time anymore.
Right? Yeah, you want it to feel real. You want it to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, speaking of, I think that kind of takes us to another scene in the episode, which is this really, this intimate conversation between Janine and Gregory, which is interesting in the way it's filmed, because, we're not actually really with them in the room. We kind of watch it with Ava from her monitor. So talk about the decision to film it like that. Was that something that was specified in the script? Was that something that you kind of came up with yourself? Talk about, the decision to film it like that.
That was in the script, that she had these security cameras and she had the
Mhm.
scene that she covered. But the
Yeah.
way that we shot it, I think, added another layer of it, because our cameras have a personality. They're reacting to what's being said. So the fact that Ava's there enjoying it, she's seen it. But our camera operators, that's the first time they've seen this. So they're zooming into Gregory when Janine said something, or they're zooming into, or they're panning from one to another, which I think really that could have been a thing where, like, you could have just shot the screen, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
played it that way. Or you could have gone, like what a lot of shows would do, is they would just go into the screen. But we gave it personality, we gave it attitude by attaching emotion, and that emotion is the emotion of the camera operators. So it adds another whole beautiful layer in our show.
And it makes it feel more intimate and more private in a way, doesn't it? But since you're not with them in that room because you're watching it, from the outside, I found it's kind of. It also must be nice for the actors. Then it must be a very different experience when they don't have the cameras, right around them. So
It's funny, whenever I'm filming anybody that I want to have a real moment, or that I feel that they may have a connection that may not happen if the cameras are there, we just back way off. And I don't know if you noticed, but whenever it's Gregory and Janine, there's usually a little bit of doorway in the shot. So to tell you that I'm not in the room, that we're giving them their space to make something real and unaffected happen. And, that's something that comes from a documentary background or a reality background, is that I never believe it's a real moment when the camera's this far away from somebody's face. It always feels a little bit performative, and it just doesn't have that extra layer. I also really like, I like to activate my viewer. I don't want a passenger. I want somebody who's doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a really good scene in the finale where you just can't get enough of this moment, but you're not going to get the full moment because that's in it by design. And I was watching my director's cut yesterday. I'm sitting in front of my Avid, and I'm like, just trying, and I shot it. I know what had happened. I'm still just doing that.
It still surprises you.
I love doing that. I love activating the viewer and making them a participant more so than just a passenger.
Yeah, I love that. I can't wait to see the finale. And I kind of want to jump then to the fourth episode, Smoking. I was telling you before we started that it's one of my favorite episodes of this show. And I have to say, everyone in it is absolutely incredible. But I do think that the child actors really do carry it. So talk a bit about, the process of working with child actors on this show, especially on an episode like this, in which the show is tackling what is essentially a very serious subject matter. How do you go about that when you're, having conversations with these children and going through some of these scenes? How do you, relay that seriousness to them while at the same time, shielding them from it because you obviously don't want to go into too much detail. So talk about that process a bit.
I think, you just talk about what they should be feeling and why they should be feeling this way. And I think you can use other language other than what you're actually talking about to get there. You don't need to say that, Janine smokes weed every night. You don't need to say that. She does something that the other people are surprised by, and they're really surprised by it. And you're probably really surprised by it. And it maybe makes you question her, a little bit. You just need to use language that is most importantly, not going to offend or corrupt, a kid. I think it's really about respecting the fact that they are young and impressionable. And, if it was an adult, you could just say exactly what's what. But with kids, I think you need to get there in a more gentle and more caring and safer way.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. And kids are so smart. They're
so smart. And they're so fearless. They're also so fearless.
They say these incredible, really, really funny things. I remember end of season 2, there's this boy named Peyton, and he's maybe 7 years old. He was on the show since the beginning. And he says to Quentin, he says, "So you created this show, right?" And Quentin says, "Yes, I did." She goes, "So you're like the head writer?" "Yep, I am." "So you're like the boss. This is your show." And she says, "Yes, I am." He says, "Well, how come you need to listen to that boy over there all the time?" I'm like, "That's fantastic." He's got a good point.
Yeah, he does. Children always add a very interesting perspective to everything. It's just, I just love, and they're, again, like I said, they're also, in a way, they're so fearless. They don't overthink things the way adults do. And I think sometimes that also shows in the, child performances, to be quite honest. And I think they just do such a terrific job on this show. I have to think about the scene where Janine is in the hallway and she says hi, and then he says, "Bet you are."
Bet you are.
That is just one of the funniest moments from the entire show, in my opinion. It's just the way he walked, the way the coat was kind of hanging off of his sleeve. It was just all absolutely hilarious.
It's also 2024. I mean, I think we need to have these honest conversations about things that have really been concealed and have been taboo. And it's just, let's get on with it. Let's get on with actually wasn't. Yeah. And I think kids they're aware. When you say they don't. Some of my favorite kids, they don't really suffer fools. They're not going to. They don't want to be. Nobody wants to be spoken down to. So I think it's always a matter of really being respectful. And they're smart kids. A lot of these kids are so smart, and their comedic timing is just
impeccable. Yeah,
I bet you are.
It's absolutely hilarious. And that kind of takes me to my final question, because I do want to talk about the assembly scene in that episode when they have that the Fade representative come in and sort of talk about the danger of consumption, because that's one of those scenes in which the actors are really just bouncing off of each other to the point where the dialogue kind of has a rhythm. It kind of has this lyrical quality to it when you listen to it, at least, where it's kind of like if one person misses a beat, then the entire thing kind of risks falling apart. At least that's what it sounds like from a viewer perspective. So talk a bit about, talk a bit about that scene and creating that rhythm, not just with the actors, but also, with the placement of the cameras, and I guess also with the edit, because again, I feel like if there's one element that's not right, the entire rhythm could kind of dissipate.
Yeah, I mean, we play with rhythm and the cadence of language and the tempo of language a lot. Like, we'll rehearse a scene more than you need to rehearse. What we're doing is like, I'll just read it. I say, let's just read it. That's just great. That's great. That's great. Let's read that. Read that again. We can pick up our cues a little bit. I think maybe you want to come in a little faster on that line so that you're not giving that person any room. And that's something we certainly do. Like the scene where they get caught with a kid when in the teacher's lounge and the kid hears it. Yeah. It's just boomity, 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 boom,
yes,
boomity,
yes.
boom. Yeah. And sometimes we're taking a couplet that's this big, and I'll split it up with add a new line so that it becomes more of a back and forth, less of one person talking and everybody else listening. I really enjoy those scenes where it's really fast. I mean, the conspiracy theory scene was one that I think was also really great. And that was, it started off with what was written, but then I kept splitting it up and giving some lines to different people. And that rhythm just plays fantastic. In the assembly room, the assembly scene, I mean, that by design, those kids knew not to give that, the people from Fade any room. Just you want to throw them off I want you to throw them off. I want you to mess with them. I want you to not give them any room so that they feel the pressure and they start flubbing. And that's really fun when you tell a kid to be the antagonist, that just go ahead and push his buttons, push it, be quick on it. Don't give him any room to answer that. Don't act like you buy his answer. Keep digging and don't give him any room to think about it. And that's when the scene gets really, really funny. And those kids, there was one kid there, Abraham, whose mom had herpes apparently. He was in the pilot, and he didn't have a speaking role. And I don't know if you remember in the pilot when the kid was, she was counting to 10, and the kid who was sitting there just turned around.
Yes,
that was
yes.
That was Abraham.
Wow.
That was one of our head talkers. Wow. And I just thought, that is really smart. He was like 6, and he just turned around and wouldn't look at her. And I thought, okay, you're a cool kid. And we just kept talking and talking and talking. I'm like, I'm gonna get you some lines, man. And look at him now.
Incredible.
He was great.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing children love or kids like, it's to be the antagonist. So this scene, right? So this scene must have been a lot of fun for them. Yeah. Well, so unfortunately, we're out of time, Randall, but thank you so much for going through your process, and congratulations on another season of Abbott, and we're all looking forward to that finale.
My pleasure. Nice talking to you. Thank you so much.